Greetings from Traffer, aka Hans.PC Guy. This is a video attempt at a progress report on the building of a system for reloading 22 long rifle cartridges. It starts with this and a pot of liquid lead. Lead melts at around 600 degrees. You heat that up and pour the lead in these holes, and that opens up, sprue, and that opens up and drops little bullets, or in this case these are cores. This was homemade from scratch. The only thing that was not homemade are the handles. Everything else was painstakingly, laboriously made in a shop by hand. It works very well. And it drops little cores. This is a core. And this is very nearly the size of a finished bullet. However, it's a little small. So we take the core and powder coat it. We put powder coat paint on there. These are red, which I don't use anymore. Harbor Freight powder coat. I use both clear and a copper, translucent copper. This has got clear powder coat on it. But for demonstration, I'm going to use these old red ones. You can see them better. Now, you take the core. I made this part. This is a reloading press. It does many different operations for reloading bullets. In this particular case, I'm using it as a swaging die. Swage means to squish metal. And what we're going to do is we're going to swage lead from a core into a very precise shape and form with this press. Squeeze that down, and when I'm done, I pop that pin, and out comes a bullet of absolutely wonderful dimension. I'm not going to say perfect, but it's very, very, very good. It's consistently 0.224 inches in diameter. Consistently, the base is 0.210 inches. It's got that nice hollow base. It's got a nicely formed round point ogive. And you notice it's got this little bonnet, or this little ring. That's where the excess lead comes out from the die system, which I'll explain later. When that comes out, I take my fingernail. When everything's running smooth, this will fall off. I won't even have to pick on it. But I pull that little skirt off of there, and I have, for all practical purposes, the best formed 22 bullet in the history of 22 rimfire manufacture. They've been making these bullets since, I believe, 1847, and this is the best formed bullet ever made in that caliber. For two reasons. It does not need to have a knurled or little slices in it to hold a grease or a lubrication, a wax. It doesn't need wax because the powder coat is as slick as a hound's tooth, and it's harder than any wax, and it's been proven with center fire that powder coat is the new thing. It replaces lubrication in almost every situation. So no longer are bullets needed to be waxed or greased with powder coat. And this is formed after the powder coat, so the powder coat does not affect the dimensions at all. We have it powder coated and then swaged to the proper dimensions. And not only that, the swaging also adds a hardness to the powder coat surface, and it adds another degree of slipperiness, making these bullets even better performing. So that's the state of the art so far, and how we get there is with this swaging system. This is the top die, which I have in loose because I wanted to take it out and show more clearly. Now I'm going to have to put a magnifying glass on that video camera because it's a very cheap camera and it doesn't focus closely at all. Inside here you can see a little ring in there. That inside is formed. This is the base die. Now this base die is two-piece basically, and these are made to form so this guy fits in here perfectly snug. There's no wobble room at all in there, none, zero, and that creates a union in which the concentricity of the bullet, the base is perfectly concentric with the point. That was hard to get, and I ended up with this system of having that recess in there to be a guide, to be exactly the same, just a perfect fit for this unit to guide. So that hole, the base with the you can see that little spot inside there, I hope, is the mandrel, if you will, that forms the hollow base in this. And that's adjustable with this screw. I can screw this in and out, raise and lower that base. And what that creates is, if I raise and lower that base, because this union is always consistently in the same place, that effectively increases or decreases the length of the base. Now there's some flexibility in that length of base. I found that it can be between about 0.09 inches to 0.06 inches. Wait, is that right? 0.09 to 0.06. Yeah, I think it's 0.09 to 0.06. So there's quite a bit of leeway there. Right now that base is about as small as I want it, short as I want to get it, because you want to have grab room for the pinch. But anyway, that's flexible, and that will determine the weight of the bullet. That way you can dial in the weight of the bullet to within about 3/10. You can get them consistently about 3 or 4/10 of a grain with the same powder coat. Now this guy here has got clear powder coat, which is a thicker powder coat, and because of the thicker powder coat, and obviously powder coating is not as dense as lead, the same exact dimension of this bullet will run 3/4 of a grain lighter than the exact same dimensions of this bullet, because the powder coat is thicker, probably twice as thick, maybe even more, 2.5 times as thick. So anyway, this is how this works. This squeezes up in here, and the excess lead goes around. There's a trough around that ring. I don't know how well you can see that. It's difficult. But there's a inside here is a cone form. Inside the shaft, it comes to a cone with a ring, and the excess lead that squeezes out can go in that space, and that's what forms that little bonnet or ring when I do it. And that way, you use I use a core that's a little oversized, and it squeezes out the excess lead. Before I made this contraption, I would let the excess lead bleed up into the extraction pin hole. Now inside here, there's a very small 2mm pin. I got a piece of one here somewhere. Actually, this is a little bigger. This is about 2.5mm. I used to use this size, but I went smaller. So there's a 2mm pin inside this that comes to the nose of the bullet, and it's held there. It won't go up because this whole rig holds it exactly in place. And then after it's squeezed, you poke this, and this pin goes down and pokes the bullet out, extracts the bullet. That's why they call it the extraction pin. Now this is the state of the art. I started making 22 long rifle bullets by just using molded cores, and quickly found out this shape, the shape necessary with that rebated heel and hollow base, is almost nearly impossible. Basically, it is impossible to mold in that form. So it has to be swaged somehow. And once I found that out, I had to embark on a swaging system. All these things have been so long in developing because they're not easy solutions. They don't have easy solutions. They say the first 90% of a development takes 10% of the effort, and the last 10% of a development takes 90% of the effort. That's an understatement for this situation. When I embarked on reloading 22s, it took me perhaps a month before I had good functioning 22 long rifle bullets. I had consistent firing 22 long rifle reloaded bullets. And since then, and I haven't slacked off. I work on this every day. Since then, I've been working on it another 3 years to get it from a function to the point where right now the bullets I make are the best that have ever been made. Now there are other aspects to reloading. There are different, obviously, there's more to a cartridge than just the bullet. For this particular case, 22 long rifle, the bullet is probably the hardest part. There's also the case, and 22 rimfire, unique in rimfire, makes a dent in the case itself from the firing pin. And the cases, because they're very thin brass, and 22 caliber rifles tend to be very have a lot of, the cheaper ones have a lot of they're not as precise as center fire as far as how they're built. The cases, when after they're fired, there's a lot of variation in the amount of expansion in the expelled cases, so they have to be resized or reformed to the proper size, which requires a whole special set of dies like this to resize the cases. I've made those. And there's also the crimp. The 22 long rifle has a special kind of crimp that is more crucial to the function of the bullet than a center fire rifle. Center fire rifles, having a primer mechanism, don't have the problem that 22 rimfire has of what they call initiation pressure. With modern gunpowder, initiation pressure is a must. The gunpowder burns very, very slowly under atmospheric pressure and is useless. It's only when the let me hit that again. It's only when the powder is compressed and burned that it creates the pressures needed to shoot, to run the bullet. Now this is harder to get off because this powder coat is much tougher. This is really good powder coat. It's marketed by a guy named Smoke, and it's by far the best stuff out there that I've tried. But anyway, because this initiation pressure, it differs from black powder. Black powder just explodes, so that you don't need a crimp to build up a pressure in rimfire. So the transition from black powder to smokeless powder in rimfire was a difficult transition. And what the pioneers of that learned was that you need a consistent heavy crimp to create the initiation pressure in order to burn the powder correctly, especially with powders that don't burn quite as fast. And powders that don't burn quite as fast, if they are pressurized, do have some performance characteristics that are better than very fast burning powders. And I've been using a relatively slow burning powder, which is HS6. So I've had to learn to make a crimp for these things that holds quite a good initiation pressure. And I built a system of testing the pull weight of the crimps to see how hard it would be to pull the bullets out of the cases. And this guy named Frost, who pioneered this stuff, said that an initiation pressure of 50 pounds, or a pull weight of 50 pounds, is ideal. So I've been trying to maintain a 50-pound crimp weight, which is more than a lot of the 22 long rifle, the cheaper stuff on the commercially available. Some of them are, and they use a little bit different powders, and some require a better crimp, and some are just better cartridges because they have a more consistent crimp. And I found that the ammunition that people complain about that is very inconsistent and doesn't give consistent velocity or placement on the target are the ones that are manufactured with a lot of variation in the pull pressure. The ones that maintain a very strict pull pressure are the ones that are most consistent. So as far as accuracy concerned, the crimp pressure is very important, and that's also dependent with the size, shape, and hardness of the lead, especially the hardness. Obviously, if you crimp 6/1000ths of a crimp of brass into a very soft lead, it's going to create a situation where a certain amount of force will pull that bullet out. But if you crimp that same crimp into harder lead, it'll require more weight to pull it out. So I also had to dial in the hardness of the lead, which can be changed by different amounts of metal in the alloy, particularly antimony or antimony content. So I like to use about 10 BHN. I may be even going to 11 or 12, depending. I haven't really been doing accuracy tests yet, but I might end up with a 10 or 11 BHN bullet for optimum initiation pressure. But this is so far the state of, I should have been making these instead of having you guys just listen to my rambling on here. But this is how she works. Now, a lot of times these guys don't stay in there. And I've been experimenting with different ways of getting those things to stick or sit on here. Sometimes they won't either sit or stay in there. And I found that, dropping them on the floor now, I found that I just put them on there and give them a bash to change that ogive, mar it, which doesn't hurt anything as long as you're going to crimp later. Whoops, I didn't have that screwed in as tight. That's all right. Then they'll stay in there. Yeah, this one's not the bottom. This has got to be set correctly. So there's a certain amount of tension. I'm going to try to show you that on this handle. And this is the stop. You want it to engage here, maybe a 1/8 of an inch, 3/16 of an inch there before it hits that stop. That way this puts enough pressure on those mating surfaces to cut the bullet, cut the excess lead, that bonnet, off the bullet. And the bonnet has to be perfectly formed. I mean, the mating surface has to be perfectly formed because it has become an anvil type blade for cutting. But it does work very, very nicely now. It's been a lot of work to get it here, but it works very, very nicely now. And hopefully I can do some close-ups for you so you can see how nice these bullets are forming. That's it for now. Thanks for watching.